Remember that one Christmas present you really wanted as a kid, but you had to wait a long time to get it? Well, imagine that you got that Christmas present, but it actually lived up to your expectations. Then you'd have this movie. Two weeks ago, man, I really need to make these videos more often. I uploaded a review of the first Incredibles movie, which I liked but thought it had some problems that not many people acknowledge. Brad Bird, the creator of The Incredibles and writer and director of the first movie and this one as well, explained that he didn't really want to make a sequel to The Incredibles unless he felt like it could be as good as the first one. And Pixar did not force him to make a sequel. But after a wait of over 14 years, it was Incredibles time again. Incredibles 2 starts off right where the last movie left off, with the Parr family fighting against the Underminer. He gets away. Remember how superheroes were illegal in the last one and that was like a plot device? Well, here, getting superheroes legal again is the whole conflict of the movie. Winston is a lover of superheroes. Man, that sounded wrong. And wants to make them legal again. So he's called up those superheroes to assign some of them on various superhero missions, hoping to gain superheroes the respect of the public again, despite them clearly already having that respect in this movie, which will lead eventually to them getting made legal again. Now, in the last movie, Mr. Incredible had to overcome his nostalgia as he yearned for the good old days. But in this movie, he has to overcome his jealousy as Elastigirl is picked over him to do the superhero missions. Mr. Incredible, meanwhile, has to stay at home and take care of the kids. As you can probably imagine with a guy with a superpowered family, taking care of them leads to quite a bit of trouble. But, big shocker, there's a villain in this movie. Ah! Yep. Screenslaver, to be precise. Wait a minute, this movie and the first one take place in the 60s. So, computers and, well, not advanced computers, home computers with screensavers hadn't been invented yet. So where'd he come up with that name? Anyway, she has to stop Screenslaver and get enough respect from the public to make superheroes legal again, and Mr. Incredible has to watch over a family of demons. Well, not demons, but people with superpowers. The movie was an unbelievable box office success, grossing over $2 billion. No. The movie was an unbelievable box office success, grossing over $1,212 million worldwide. It is currently the third highest grossing movie of this year so far, and the highest grossing animated movie of all time. So what do I think of this movie? I initially wasn't that interested in this movie. I saw that there were trailers for it up and they were finally making it, but after a 14-year wait, I really wasn't all that interested. That all changed when, well, I saw the movie. I loved it, and I genuinely like it more than the first. I don't think it's an upgrade over the first in every way. The plot's a bit more predictable, and the villain is debatably worse, but overall, this movie takes the things that I loved about the first movie and gives me more of them. The characters in this movie feel more fleshed out than the first one to me. That's largely because of the plot of this one involving all of the stuff at the house, which gives a lot of time for these characters to interact with one another, as opposed to the first movie, which was mostly just about Bob. Probably the biggest criticism that I hear most often on this movie, from like people on YouTube and stuff, is that it's the same plot as the first movie, just with the roles reversed. Yet many of those same critics loved Star Wars The Force Awakens. The double standard is just unbelievable. Now, to be fair, they're not entirely wrong. On a very superficial level, this movie does technically follow a very similar formula to the first movie. But I don't really think that following the same basic formula for a movie sequel is that big of a problem when you add so much new substance to the movie that makes it worth watching in its own right. Really, this movie is only similar to the first in the same way that all the Indiana Jones movies are similar to each other. Some other criticisms of this movie that are common that I disagree with include the criticism that Mr. Incredible is a jerk in this one, as if he didn't have his moments of darkness in the first movie. The criticism that the villain's motivation makes no sense, which it has holes in it, but so did Syndrome's motivation. Some critics say that it's okay for Syndrome to have a silly motivation because the first movie didn't really take him seriously and his motivation being silly was just part of the fun. But this movie tries to go more serious and the villain's motivation doesn't work because of that. But one of the few problems that I had with the first movie was that they do take Syndrome seriously, and it doesn't work. A criticism less common with critics and more common with fans is that Dash doesn't have a huge action scene in this one like he does in the first one. Now, he does use his speed a lot in this movie in action scenes, but he doesn't have this big action chase scene all to himself like in the first movie. But if he did have such a scene in this one, you people would just complain that it makes it more similar to the first one. It's a no-win situation. There are other criticisms with this movie that people are throwing at it that I disagree with, but I think you get the general idea. Most of them either don't make sense or could just as easily be applied to the first movie. Now, to be fair, there are some critics of this movie that do make some good points with their arguments that I agree with, but we'll get on to that later. I'm talking about the positives here. The animation in this is simply breathtaking. The first movie had really good animation for its time, but a lot of it isn't too pretty to look at now. Not saying it's bad, it's just not gorgeous or anything. But with this movie, just look at this random frame that I took from a humor scene in the movie. Look at the detail in the chairs that they're sitting in, the wood that holds the plants, the walls in the background, Mr. Incredible's clothes fabric, Mr. Incredible's hand, even the silverware. Almost every single frame of this movie is gorgeous to look at. Even if this movie wasn't the entertaining, action-packed family superhero movie that it was, I'd probably still enjoy it just for how it looks. The story here is no longer just about Bob. It's about the entire family. The action scenes are unbelievable. Some might find that they go on a little too long, and that's okay, if that's your kind of taste. But they're just amazingly animated with the best set pieces, and they're remarkably entertaining. But equally entertaining is the comedy in this movie. The first one never really tried to be funny that much, but this movie has some of the funniest scenes in a Pixar movie so far. There is this one fight scene between the baby of the family, Jack Jack, and this random raccoon that's in their yard. And it contributes nothing to the plot, but it is so worth it. It is hilarious. Even my neighbor Rob, who didn't like this movie, loved that scene. By the way, never try to squirt water out of your nose. It's just a bad idea. All of the characters here are wonderfully sympathetic. Well, not the villain, but you get what I'm saying. I also like how the movie doesn't go out of its way to reference the first movie, which must have been a pretty big temptation given how so much of this movie's audience is young adults who grew up with the first movie. Now, is this a flawless movie? I wouldn't say so. Even though I like this movie better, I think it's inferior to the first in terms of raw plot and in terms of emotional moments. The latter isn't because the movie doesn't succeed when it does try to have emotional moments, it just doesn't try to have emotional moments that often. Now I'm going to give a minor spoiler here in 3, 2, 1. The villain here is a plot twist, and the reveal of who it is painfully obvious. I feel like an idiot for not guessing who it was when I first saw the movie. The movie has some pretty glaring plot holes that some people have pointed out to me, but I don't really think that plot holes matter that much when the movie itself is so entertaining that I don't notice the plot holes until someone else points them out. I'm not gonna tell you what they are, you can just look it up if you want. I'm talking about the stuff that I really see as problems here. Despite this almost being a 2-hour movie, I personally thought it was a little bit too short. There were some scenes where characters seemed to just get over their problems a little bit too quickly. And I feel like if they had a little bit more running time on this movie, they could have had more scenes of those characters working through said problem. In spite of its flaws, this movie is very entertaining, and I'd recommend you check it out quickly. When I first saw this movie, I really liked it. Second time I saw it, I just loved it. And it'll probably get better with each time I view it. This has been Signature, and I hope you enjoyed this review. Stay tuned for later reviews.
Hey guys, sorry about the bad quality camera here, but I have a quick announcement to make. I've decided that I'm gonna make some special videos on this channel, but you won't be able to see them in my normal selection of videos. They'll be hidden videos that you will be able to find somewhere on this channel, but you'll have to look.